Hello, everybody, and welcome to our June 2025 astrology forecast. Today, I'm delighted to be joined by our esteemed faculty member, Stevie Lowe. So, thank you so much for coming back on the show. And how are you doing today?
Thanks for having me, Cal. I'm doing good. I'm looking forward to this month immensely.
Me too,
Mhm.
absolutely. And it's always a pleasure to hear your brilliant insights. So, before we get into the details of each week, let's talk about the overview for June. Because, as you just mentioned, I'm really looking forward to this month. We've got the two benefics gaining dignity. We have Jupiter going into its exaltation for the best part of a year. We're going to have Venus coming into its home sign in Taurus. And even for the first week of June, we're going to have Mercury in rulership in Gemini. So this sense of dignity and the dignified planets, I think, is really going to help this month. And this speaks to my overall advice for the month of June is let's just take a break from the collective S show and enjoy ourselves. Let's enjoy
Yeah.
ourselves this month because if you're in the Northern Hemisphere, like me and Stevie, we're going from
Mhm.
spring to summer. Now, many of you might be planning some vacations, or if, like me, you've got children in school, they'll be coming out for their summer break. So I think this is a really good month as we get deeper into June to really indulge ourselves in some earthly pleasures. We're going to move from a dominance of fire and air planets into water and earth. So again, this is a great time for a bit of indulgence, a bit of fun. If you're going on vacation, maybe go down to the ocean, or if you're near a lake, I think water is going to be very therapeutic for many of us. And on the collective, we're still going to have some turbulent times coming ahead, which I'll talk about. But first, Stevie, what are your thoughts overview for the month of June?
Yeah, I love what you said about putting yourself near water. Also, just for the overview of the Earth, I think looking at those elemental shifts is really going to be helpful to find tangible ways to grapple with all of the hot ideas that we've been working through, and that we still are, with this Aries ingress with Saturn there.
That's a good point because I think still collectively we're still heading for some turbulent times. Now, I think more on a personal level, this month might be a little bit better for
Mhm.
all of us. But of course, we've got Saturn in its fall, not quite making it towards Neptune, but getting close to Neptune. So I can't help have this sense of this, especially here in the United States, the collective sense of kind of like the law doesn't matter anymore. Do you know what I mean? Like the laws, your people in authority aren't obeying the laws that are already on the books. So maybe that's the case of that Saturn in fall conjunct Neptune. And also, as we get deeper into the month, we're going to have Uranus at the critical degree of 29 degrees of fixed Earth. So that makes me wonder maybe we might see, I don't know, I don't want to say natural disaster, but there might be something to do with the Earth or some crisis or some unexpected event. So that's something to watch out for with a generational planet. What else have we got? We've got Pluto retrograde as well. So I think collectively it's still a mixed bag and we've still got some issues there. But the bottom line is, like you said, with the Aries ingress of the Saturn, I mean, if the authorities around the world aren't going to follow their own rules, the danger here is that collectively, not only do we have this air of revolution in the air like we've had historically, people might just turn
Mhm.
around and go, you know what, if you're not following the rules, we're not going to follow the rules. And that's the danger of breaking the rules to a certain degree. I
Mhm.
don't know your thoughts, Stevie.
Yeah. The rules for thee and not for me is not for Saturn and Aries. And I think all of the Saturn returners are gonna be those generational instigators that we can, if you have your Saturn in a fire sign natally, you can join the cause a little bit easier, maybe. You might clash if it's squared, but the revolt the revolt vibes feel like they're looming.
Absolutely. But like I said, let's just take a break from the collective S show and let's enjoy ourselves this month. So, going into our first week, Stevie, what are your thoughts for the first week of June?
Yeah, first week we have our lovely Venus sextile Jupiter. It's sort of both are, they're in a state of debility, but they're making a creative aspect, as we call it. It's sort of like a moment where we could just say like with the Venus retrograde stuff and the Jupiter Gemini stuff, like sort of what's done is done. Like what can you walk towards instead of walk away from? At this point. So I love that little aspect for that inspiration.
I really love that point because June 1st, we've got the Venus conjunct Chiron. Now, as you've mentioned, Venus not happy in detriment in Aries. And I've got the sense here that this might be a good week to smooth over any relationships that you might be having issues with. With Venus conjunct Chiron, this maybe has a sense and can have a sense of opening old wounds in relationships. And I think the advantage here with Mercury in rulership in Gemini, we might have a bit of objectivity here, the ability to see the arguments on both sides if we do have some troubles in our relationship. So that Mercury with the objectivity, the ability to see both ends of the story might just help in our communications with our relationships and smoother things over. And if we do get to amend some of our relationships by the time we get to June 5th, we have Venus entering her domicile, going into Taurus. And that way, if we fixed our relationships, we might be able to enjoy some earthly pleasures as we have a strong Venus on June 5th.
Yeah, yeah, I like that. It's kind of exactly what you're saying. There's something there to address. And so we have that harmony indicators this week of address it. And for Mercury sextile Mars, exactly, it's can you will walk the talk.
Mm.
It'll be that Leo showing of what you think is what you're going to do. And you'll be like a Leo showing of that. Venus entering Taurus right after is if you're going to be brave, which you can be with that Venus Mars, then you'll have a nice cushion, nice bed to lay down on if it was just all too much from the day before.
That's a great point because it's not, even though Venus gets her dignity back, it's not going to be all smooth sailing as we get deeper into the month. That Venus is going to rub shoulders with Pluto, so that might bring some intensity. But for all intents and purposes, I'm really enjoying, looking forward to this month in terms of dignity.
Mhm.
Okay, into week two, Stevie, your thoughts?
Yeah, week two. So Mercury is, I didn't mention this at the overall, but Mercury is kind of buzzing by this month. A lot of the stuff going on, like you mentioned, Saturn approaching Neptune, not getting there. Mercury is going to be making hard aspects to Saturn, then Neptune, then trining Saturn, then Neptune. So Mercury is doing a lot of communication this month, and this is a great week to kind of see that in play and just see how busy your schedule is probably going to be. And I think Cal, like you said, people planning for summer, planning the trips, getting all of the logistics set up. Mercury square Saturn, maybe you put in a request for time off and you get blocked. So it's not all without challenges, but you have Mercury sextile Venus coming up at the end of the week there. So you have a little bit of grace following up as well.
Wonderful point. And I think the big story, as we've talked about for week two, is Jupiter moving into Cancer, into
Mm,
its exaltation for the
mm,
best part of the year. And I've been looking forward to this so much for the first couple of months, finally getting the benefics, having some dignity. So you make some really good points there, Stevie. June 8th, we've got that Mercury zipping by, we've got the conjunction to Jupiter.
mhm,
So we're expanding the realms of communication. Maybe you have a lot of bright ideas and different things that you want to jot down, different plans that you might have. There's almost a sense with that Mercury conjunct Jupiter and Gemini. Maybe sometimes it's over talking or over analyzing. And sometimes I think the advantage here is where we get Jupiter into Cancer, which is a cardinal sign. It's enough
mhm,
with the chit chat and the chatter. Let's get our plans together and let's take some action. But as
mhm,
you're saying, Stevie, I might caution people to maybe wait a few days in order to take that expansive action. We've got Mars in play as well. But as you mentioned, we've got the Mercury bumping shoulders with Saturn, Mercury square Neptune. So as you said, Stevie, if you're looking for time off, maybe wait a few days because that might be a no from Saturn. And I always caution with Mercury square Neptune, be careful of people trying to pull the wool over your eyes. We might see this collectively too, where we see more BS in the collective more than usual. And certainly, I would avoid signing any contracts around June 9th because the details might not be, even though Mercury is strong, the details might not be very
mhm,
clear. So maybe wait a few
mhm,
days until
mhm.
the aspects moves on before you take that Jupiter cardinal water action as we get into week two.
Yeah, that's really great. And also just don't overindulge yourself in any of I think what you said, people pulling the wool over your head, over your eyes, or rose-colored glasses, beer goggles, love at first sight stuff. You gotta wait to let that stuff pan out. And Jupiter Cancer is the star of the show. So Jupiter Cancer is, it's a ball. We have now both benefics with dignity, and they aspect by whole sign. So that's quite lovely. And I think for this Jupiter Cancer moment, we're going into summer, so the fruit is going to be sweeter this summer. I think we're going to see a lot of important charities coming up, a lot of ability to have levity in more of a caring sense. That like, haha, it's comedy, bro, I think is going to be over, and we're going to be coming back around to like belly laughter and truly experiencing levity and nobility in our pursuit. So looking forward to that
I
greatly.
love that, Stevie, because tying in with what you're saying, we've got the build up coming up to the full moon on June 11th, which is going to add extra energy to the skies. We've got a full moon in Sagittarius, so we're going to speak to Jupiter as well. With
Mhm.
Jupiter in Cancer, maybe this is a time where you're going on vacation with family and close friends, maybe that closer to kin type of deal. But as you're saying, Stevie, that closenessness, if we can work out our relationships, if we've got any issues in them, this may be a great week to smooth things over and have some enjoyment. Full moon, go in and enjoy yourself. I know that falls on a Wednesday, but if you are on vacation, then it doesn't matter if it's the middle of the week.
Mm-hmm. Heck yeah. And that's the great thing. That's the great use of the Mercury square Neptune. It's like, yes, go on a vacation near the beach and forget which day of the week it is. Like that's the perfect kind of delusion to fall into. So yeah, good
That's
advice.
a great point. And I forgot to mention the Venus square Pluto. So there might be an element, and that's only short for a day, but there
Mhm.
may be an element of some power plays and relationships. But with the overall theme, I think it'll be overshadowed by more of the positive
Mhm.
energies coming through, I think,
I
in
think so
week
too.
two. Wonderful. Into week three, Stevie, your thoughts?
Yeah, so we have Jupiter square Saturn. I mean, the Jupiter square Saturn and Neptune are what really catches my eye. I'm worried about I'm worried about it to a certain level, but looking at Jupiter's transit through Cancer, this square is not going to persist throughout the majority of this transit. In fact, it's sort of one and done, because Saturn will eventually move back into Pisces. So I'm not worried that this energy is going to linger outside of the fact that Saturn is involved, so certain things can become permanent. So if you do just watch your bottoms during this time, I really think it'll just be a little bump we go through and we won't have to ride it out for this whole. It's not going to ruin Jupiter and Cancer elections or anything like that. It's going to be angular by square by sign for a while, but yeah, I'm a little worried about the idea of endangered species sort of coming up, things like some kind of scarcity with it. We have this like, very replenishing Jupiter and Cancer, and it's squaring this very backed into a corner kind of caged Saturn. So there's maybe levels of scarcity in production and scare, we're sort of, I think, also drawing back to Cal, you said about the water and earth shifts. We're gonna start seeing scarcity in production because of our economic, at least in America here. I know our relationship is really specific to the world right now. So I want to put that asterisk there. But yeah.
Wonderful point, Stevie. And picking up on what you were saying, I feel like for me, week three, it has the potential of being quite a volatile week. I think the overview for June it has a mixed bag in terms of harmony and being able to enjoy ourselves. But I think week three is probably the most difficult week we might have in June. As you've mentioned, we've got the Mars square Uranus, the Jupiter square Saturn. We've got Uranus June 17th at the critical degree. Now, I've got a sense of, let's say, for example, you're out on vacation. I would certainly avoid this week to do anything over the top, bungee jumping or, race car driving, anything along those lines, because the
Yeah.
Mars square Uranus can speak to sudden accidents. With Uranus at the critical degree, just unexpectedness. Maybe on the collective, with Uranus at that late degree, as I said before, we might see something, as you're saying, Stevie, maybe something in the collective, whether it's to do with the Earth. Again, I'm not saying, in a sense, I'm not saying a natural disaster, but expect the unexpected with Uranus. That's the key word for the outer planet. So I'll just say be careful of this week and the volatility, especially if you're out on the roads. June 15th on a weekend. Watch out for any people just being erratic. That's the kind of energy we feel this way. But on the positive sense, if you are out on vacation, there's a lot of energy in the sky. So this might be a good time to explore different things, explore something new within reason, but maybe being a little bit cautious not to do anything over the top or too dramatic or dangerous at that point.
That's great advice. Great advice.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think in terms of we might see more volatility in the markets, which we have been seeing for the last couple of months. So maybe it's a week to keep an eye out for that as well in the collective. Yeah, and speaking to your point about the Jupiter square Saturn, that's a really good point. It's not going to be a recurring theme. And I think with the relative dignity of the Jupiter and Saturn, the Jupiter, I think if you're going to talk about winning out of that tension, that Jupiter is exalted, that Saturn is in fall. So maybe that Jupiter has a bit more impetus than maybe that Saturn, I think, in week 3. Okay, into week 4. Stevie, your thoughts?
Yeah. So this is such a busy month. We're moving in now to the Sun square, Saturn and Neptune. And so we've had Mercury in week 2, we had Jupiter week 3, and now we have Sun. And sort of to go back, to circle all the way back to Mercury with what Cal said about falsehoods and relationships and contracts and fine print, that this is just another moment where now the Sun is getting involved. So we had Jupiter and the Sun, and both of these are sort of, they can both be teachers and or leadership in certain aspects. So you just want to be careful about making sure that there's a decent and solid relationship when you are engaging in a learning process, as well as just any contractual agreement. There's probably going to be factions going on with, because then we have the Sun approach, with Jupiter. And so we're going to have factions of like religiosity having issues, maybe like in sex, a lot of sort of that tension is there with like that level of Neptunian delusion. So just be careful about that. That's still around here, week 4, unfortunately.
Yeah, great point, Stevie. Just watching out, even on the collective, whether, we're probably going to hear religious stories back in the news. I know there's a lot of things going through the Supreme Court right now. So it might be the case of, that polarization that we've seen, of course, for a long time might be highlighted here in week 4 as well. And I think for me, week 4 is a bit of a mixed bag. I do really like June 24th in terms of the Jupiter Cazimi. And, this is a great time if you're maybe electing. Of course, you've got other things going on in the charts, but, if you made this a date for, going on an excursion to expand your horizons, it's just going to, not only is that Jupiter strong in exaltation, it's going to be supercharged at this point. So this might be a wonderful time for growth and expansion. And as we get to each rising sign, we can get a little bit more specific to each rising sign and what area of life that might mean for you, for those who are watching. But as we get into June 26th, we have Mercury going into Leo. So we're going into an outward polarity. We've got that fixed fire. And I think as we get to the end of the month, we've got the June 29th, the Mercury opposition to Pluto. Maybe if we're quite bold in our communication style as Mercury enters Leo, we might get some opposition, some power plays maybe as we get to June 29th. This could be anything from co-workers or bosses where you might have said something and they turn around and go, hold your horses, or something to that degree.
Yeah, I really liked the Mercury trine Neptune from Leo here, and I thought maybe we might be getting one of our summer bops starting around. There might be a summer bop drop at the end of June, or some kind of, we only often associate Neptune with these, hard to define, hard to see, hard to hold on to, but it's also kind of cultural phenomena, in a sense. So I'm looking for that for summer outfits, summer styles, summer bops. So there's some fun coming up as well.
Really love that point because June 28th falls on a Saturday. So even if you're in your local area, I would say this is a great time to go out to a concert. We've got Mercury
Mhm.
and Neptune in fire signs. We've got the outward polarity. So if you enjoy a rock concert or whatever music you enjoy, go out and have a great time on the Saturday it falls on. So I really love that point, Stevie. Absolutely. Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for going through the first couple of weeks. Now we're going to switch on to all of our rising signs and what might be coming up and the potentials for everybody watching here. So, Stevie, into our Aries rising friends, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, so I think for Aries rising, obviously Saturn is going to be something you're acclimating to for the next few years. In a sense, the Mars getting out of Leo, it's not going to be trining your ascendant at this point, but with Mars being in this sort of part of the sky for so long at this point, I think it's going to be really nice just to be in triplicity in Virgo and really getting the focus kind of off of you a little bit and letting yourself just fall into back into a routine. I'm sure for Mars rising or for Aries rising and Scorpios that this, Mars is definitely post shadow, but we're still in Leo. And so it's just like, can we have something new? And you get something new. So your Lord of your Ascendant is gonna be gaining dignity and making beautiful aspects to some other planets.
Wonderful point, Stevie. I was just looking, of course, we've got that Saturn Neptune story going on. So let us know, Aries rising, if you had felt that shift with some of those planets, the Saturn Neptune coming in. Especially, I'd imagine, if you've got early degrees of Aries rising, that you
Mhm.
might find that energy shift. I'll be curious to know, let us know in the comments how that's
Yeah,
worked for you.
and especially with the midheavens in Capricorn or Aquarius, so it's not just your physical being and self, but it's also your midheaven involved. So let us know if you've seen the shifts, if you have your midheaven in Capricorn or Aquarius. I'm really curious about that too.
Really great point, Stevie. And speaking to your point before, you've got your chart ruler. It's been in the fifth house for a while. Maybe you've been enjoying, if you are into sports or you like taking the action, that extra fire might have been helpful. But even when we get into the sixth whole sign house, um, on the flip side, this could be a time where you just got more energy pushed in. You might have a lot of work on your plate, maybe this time. If you're not going on vacation, maybe some of the work starts to pile up. But of course, Mars has its planetary joy in the sixth, and to Stevie's point with the dignity might help. But that you might find, especially as we've got the Jupiter late degrees through the third house, an active third house for the month of June, both with the Sun and the Mercury growing through. I wonder if you maybe have a lot of work on your plate around this
Mhm.
time with, maybe a lot of emails or back and forth. So if you do have the time, maybe book a vacation and give yourself some breathing room. What's going to be very interesting is we're going to have that exalted Jupiter become angular in your chart as Jupiter goes into your fourth house. So that's going to be probably quite loud for you,
Mhm.
Aries rising. And, this is going to be for the best part of a year. And there's many different themes that can happen. You're in your home life here. So, if
Mhm.
you're looking to maybe, build an extension or do something with the home to expand the home in some way, or maybe even move to a bigger home, maybe one of the themes. But that's not going to be immediate. You've got a whole year to play with that. But there are many different themes that can happen. If you've got early degrees of Aries rising, just maybe careful of overdoing things because that Jupiter will rub up against those early descendant agrees. And yeah, any thoughts, Stevie, on the Jupiter moving?
Yeah, I think I really like what you said. It's going into a cardinal sign, but you said you have a whole year. So it's like don't force yourself to do anything immediately, even though you might be moved to do so with cardinal. Um, yeah, just basically that. But I do love the idea of that angularity, and it's sort of giving you at least a year out of this Saturn transit to have some forces of good that are kind of constantly standing behind you, lifting you up, giving you some emotional grace and resilience.
Wonderful point, Stevie. And Aries Rising, if you look at your charts, you've got a preponderance of planets below the horizon. So for a long time now, this is really talking about, I mean, you've got all the planets bar Pluto under the horizon. So it's really about your private life, your self-development and those in your immediate environment. And that's kind of where the energies are pushed through at this particular time. But wonderful. Thank you, Stevie. Now into our Taurus Rising. Friends, Stevie, your thoughts?
Yeah, so Taurus, we're not going to see Taurus, Venus conjunct Uranus this month, but Venus is going into Taurus year first, so that's obviously a home sweet home, baby. Um, and Venus is gonna be, this is the last Venus transit in Taurus with Uranus that you're gonna experience with Uranus in your first. So I think this is sort of her just ingressing into Taurus is almost heralding the end of something else as well. So I think it's a good time this whole transit, especially to just take this as an inventory moment and let yourself sit in these past 8 years of upheaval. Um, that's a big one.
Such wonderful points, Stevie, because we've had that Mars angular going through the fourth house. So maybe recently, maybe you've been having, probably maybe conflicts at home, and it's not helped by the fact that we've had Venus traveling through the 12th in detriment. So you might find a shift in energy, as Stevie said, as that Venus becomes happy in rulership and starts moving through your first house. So I would
Mhm.
say if possibly, if things like the home life or career have been a bit cumbersome, I would say go and treat yourself, Taurus Rising, as you have that Venus moving into your first house, particularly if it's close to your ascendant degree.
Mhm.
Go and pamper yourself. Go and have a day out, maybe a spa day. Go and treat yourself. Maybe go and get some new clothes and try a new outfit out, and really, enjoy yourself for this month as Venus goes through. Another part of the picture, we've got a lot of activity in the second house in whole sign. We've got the sun moving through, the Mercury, the Jupiter. So there might be a lot of emphasis on, possessions, maybe finances at this time. Maybe as that Jupiter gets to its critical degree and you do go and treat yourself, maybe be careful, maybe not to overspend.
Mhm.
Be mindful of your own finances. But the big story for you, Taurus Rising, as Jupiter goes into your third house whole sign for the best part of a year, you're going to have those third house activities. So this just could be an expansion of, doing a lot more local trips around your local neighborhood. You might be spending a lot more time with siblings. There's many different themes that can happen.
Mhm.
Maybe related to work. Maybe if you work from home, you're going to have like, a deluge of emails for the best part of a year, a lot of work activity going on. Stevie, your thoughts of that Jupiter story?
Yeah, I love the Jupiter there. Jupiter in the third it's definitely a local community organizer feeling. Like you want to take care of your neighbors and you want to set up a little free library and little free grocery stand. And yeah, it just gives off a really it's it's with the Cancer being ruling the third, with the moon ruling the third. The moon has joy in the third, so the moon is not necessarily going to be in everyone's third, but it's as the ruler of the third for you, it does have these connotations of really being in community with your direct neighborhood. Whereas the 11th would be bigger branches and organizations. You have your third house of locality. So I love Jupiter there. I think what you said is going to be so true. Just very busy, but probably busy doing things you really care about that help others, again, charity, educational stuff, as well as maybe travel stuff too.
I love those points, Stevie. And going back to that Mars, you might be more helpful for you as that Mars goes into Virgo, because Mars rules your seventh house and it squares by sign from the fourth to the seventh. So you might see some ease up in terms of if you have any conflict with relationships as that Mars goes through your fifth house. Maybe you can indulge in some creative projects, some creative endeavors. That Mars always has a nicer connection to the ascendant as well. If you're looking
Mhm.
to maybe play some sports or have a healthy outlet, because I think maybe with that Saturn going into its fall into the 12th, it rules the ninth and your 10th house whole sign.
Mhm.
So you might find, I don't know what you think, Stevie, but there might be some issues around maybe career or
Mhm.
obviously depending what else is going on your chart.
Mhm.
That Saturn story is going to be, I mean, Saturn is going to dip its toes and it's going to go back into Pisces and then come back through. But when it eventually stays in that whole sign 12th house in its fall, those are the connections of your life that you might see over the next 2.5 years as Saturn makes its full
Yeah, yeah,
point there.
absolutely. Absolutely. It's good, especially with if you have your midheaven in this case in the ninth or 10th house. And then you also have sort of a double positive going on here because Saturn moves out of your 11th. So if you just burn down all of your friendship, or if you just crumbled a bridge of friendships when Jupiter moves into Cancer, again, ruling that 11th house, you can make new connections there. So if you're feeling isolated from community, I think this is a good year to trust and step back into community. But with those apprehensions that you've shared all along the way, Cal, of um, the personal integrity and feeling safe and knowing you're safe in situations with these squares to with this conjunction to Neptune coming up.
I love those points, Stevie. And just to reinforce your point about, the area of community. I mean, we've got the North Node in there as well for a period of time. So I think it just emphasizes those wonderful points. Absolutely. Fantastic. Okay, into our Gemini rising friends. Stevie, your thoughts?
Yeah, Gemini. Gemini's Jupiter is moving out. That's the big that that's the big deal for you this month is Jupiter's moving out. So there might be that like looking around like am I really alone? Like I mean, I'm sure you develop like five different personalities in your head over the last year who you've come to know and love, but they might all leave with Jupiter and you might go back to sanity now. Um just maybe, I don't know, but yeah, I think Jupiter is going to be blessing the second house, which isn't a bad deal unless you're overspending or forced to kind of but you might be in a position to provide for others in that same sense. But yeah, just if life seems to calm down, a lot of you probably will enjoy that, but maybe some of you will feel like a lacking, like where is that boisterous feeling? So just sit with the quiet. It's probably been not quiet for a while.
I think that's wonderful advice for Gemini rising. You're probably being quite active, especially with all those planets going through the whole sign. First house, of course, we've got your chart ruler, Mercury for a time there as well, the sun highlighting. So, depending where your ascendant degree is, maybe you've been doing a lot of talking or interacting with others. But of course, this is about you, the first house, so how you come across. And maybe that Jupiter for a long time now going through the first house, maybe on the negative side, if you maybe overindulge at times, maybe it can be easy for Jupiter on the ascendant to gain a little bit of weight if you've overindulged, but maybe that's not the case for you. Maybe that's fine. But I like, as Stevie was saying, it's gonna be really nice for this Jupiter gets its exaltation. It's
Mhm.
gonna go into your succeedant supporting house, second house. That Jupiter also rules your 10th house. So maybe for the best part of the year, maybe you'll get an opportunity where you get to expand your income or things along those lines. Those you might see an influx from somewhere with that Jupiter, but this is going to be a year story, so this might not happen straight away. That's just something maybe to look out over for the year. And I think, yeah, to Stevie's point, some enjoyment. We've got that Jupiter rule in the seventh house. So, marriage partners or just partners that you have or close one-on-one relationships, this might be a nice time to connect. The only downside, maybe with Jupiter, as Stevie talked about, is watch out for overspending
Mhm.
with Jupiter moving through. So just be mindful of your finances. But it seems like Gemini Rising, you've been quite active for a time. Let's see. The only one of the main issues maybe here is we've got a malefic, we've got the Mars which will be going into an angular fourth house for you, whole sign. So you might find for a time there may be some conflict at home or maybe some arguments, but it doesn't always have to be negative, depending on what else is going on in your chart. You could also be talking about here in terms of putting effort into maybe home projects and things of that
Mhm,
nature,
mhm.
and that goes through it. And then of course we've Saturn Neptune's going to be a big story, and so that's going to be interesting as we go over. Any final thoughts there, Stevie? I've lost my train of
Ye-
thought.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you said the house repairs. Mars is gonna sextile Jupiter from the fourth to the second, so you're gonna be able to, if you have had to do pipe work or some kind of plumbing, that's great. Also, if you're late on gardening this year and you want to plant some stuff, I think Mars is Mars Virgo is really good with dirt and bugs and stuff like that. So yeah, cultivate your garden. It's not too late in a lot of places at this point.
I really love that point, Stevie, because my wife is Gemini Rising, and for her birthday, she's a Tauran. For her birthday, I bought her some, instead of just doing flowers like I usually do each year, I got some plants to grow. So I got like was it like what did I get now? Basil and tomatoes and things like that.
Love
So
it.
now she's just starting to
She's getting in
look
there.
up how to plant and things like that. So it's so funny you mentioned that.
This is a great time for that. I love it. So yeah, that's gonna be a good transit, especially for the earth signs because we get the trine. So
Exactly. Wonderful. Yeah, she has the green fingers. I've got a lack of earth and I'm just not practical whatsoever. So I love earth people because they complement me
I love it.
in where I lack. But anyway, that's enough about me. Sorry for rambling on. Gemini Rising. Let's move to our Cancer Rising friends. Stevie, your thoughts?
Yeah, Cancer risings. I know you all talked about Saturn last month, so we're not going to go too much into that, but it is like your first test of this whole thing because you're going to have Mercury squaring Saturn and Neptune, then you're going to have Jupiter squaring it, then you're going to have the sun squaring it all this month. So all like it's all happening for once at once for you all. And I guess for all cardinals, we all sort of have that to a lesser degree. Um but with you, you have Jupiter in the first, and then you have your Saturn in the 10th here. So, of course, we've got to see that angle and know that don't overwork yourself. You could be, again, the cardinal thing is to just do it, but sometimes the right thing is to wait and make a good plan, and so that's going to be a struggle, I think, to wait this month.
That's wonderful advice, Stevie, especially for you, Cancer Rising. If you've been on the go a lot, if you look at your chart, just the preponderance of planets, we're above the horizon, we're in the social realm. So whether that's the busy 10th house you've got going on, especially now with the Saturn and Neptune dipping its toes into your 10th house. Venus might have been quite nice, even though in detriment, moving over if you have maybe your midheaven in the 10th house. But I think for you, Cancer Rising, it's not quite your season yet. We have a lot of activity in the 12th house. So if you do feel a bit overworked, to CV saying, I would say just go and have a break. Go behind the scenes, take a retreat. It might be a good month, especially the first couple of weeks before your season, is to maybe go on vacation if you've got time to do that. Go and relax, go and put your feet in the water, all those kind of things, because you're going to probably find that energy shift as those planets move into the first house. We have the sun, Mercury moving through, Jupiter is going to be, as Stevie's saying, a big picture and a big theme for the best part of a year.
Mhm,
So I'd enjoy maybe this quiet time before
mhm,
things get quite active. And of course, this Jupiter might be nice, and with the sun and the Mercury going over through the first house, maybe this will be a time where you can voice your opinions, maybe go and treat yourself a little bit to a certain degree. As the malefic moves into your third house, if you have been quite busy, maybe you do go on vacation and you come back to find 1,000 emails you have to get through
mhm,
with the Mars activating the third house. And I was going to say something else, and it's completely gone out of my mind. Stevie, any thoughts with that Saturn picture? I know it's going to be a long-term thing, but
Mhm.
in an angular 10th house for Cancer.
Yeah, that's just gonna be something that is again we when we have I like what you told them use this 12th house moment to really like collect yourself for what's coming up in the rest of the month. Um Jupiter again is not going to be, it's going to be squared by sign to Saturn, but it's not going to be in that direct relationship. So it could be a little more tense at the beginning, but just walking with it, knowing that it's really not going to be like that the whole time. We're gonna more and more that orb is going to grow between them, and the tension is going to release. Um, so with Saturn and Neptune in the 10th, you really have a chance to wrestle with the ideas of, having a strict boss, being your own boss, what kind of as sort of even what you mentioned before about laws and things like that. Like what kind of laws do you need to abide by in order to in order to like survive in the world? Again, to throw back to Cal, with all these planets transiting the southern part of your chart, and a lot is kind of demanded of you in that area. So that 10th house, of course, as in most of the houses, can be things in your life yourself, but it can also be others. So if you do have a boss that seems kind of tough, um, that could come up, and just I think waiting until at least Mercury is trining that 10th house stuff to like talk about it is probably a good idea. Letting all the square tension fade away this year before you go into like the mode of trying to fix, and let the fire trines help you fix throughout the year and this month.
Wonderful advice, Stevie. And just to reiterate before about that sense of taking a retreat if you need it, with that Venus gaining dignity and going through your 11th house, maybe you could do this with a friendship group and
Mhm.
maybe do it with a bunch of close friends in a group setting. That might be nice to go on a retreat if you don't like to do it by yourself. That might be a nice thing to do as we get into June. But wonderful. Okay, into our Leo rising friends. Stevie, your thoughts?
Yeah, so Leo rising friends are gonna have Mars moving out of Leo, which could feel like a lack of energy, but it's probably gonna be nice, and you sort of need your muscles to rest at this point. Um, you have Saturn in the ninth. And again, Mercury is going to move from where it is here all the way to the first. So it's going to be 11th, 12th, first, eventually trining that ninth. So, interesting like issues with long distance communication or travel, and maybe having to rearrange a trip if you were planning a trip this summer or this month. You guys might be one of the ones who have to rework that with that square moving forward. And you have Mars moving into the second, so don't burn a hole in your pocket either, basically.
I think that those are wonderful advice for Leo risings. Now, even though Saturn goes into its fall, I feel like I've got a sense that it's probably maybe less harmful, depending on what's going on with the rest of your chart, of course, Leo rising. But we go into a cadent house here. I know many Leo risings for a time, especially those who have been trying to borrow money from banks, have been blocked with that Saturn for a period of time. I mean, Saturn's going to only dip its toes into Aries, come back, and then go back in. But this is a start of it. And I know for many Leo rising, some of my friends have had struggled in terms of whether that's asking, borrowing money for banks or having issues with partners in terms of shared resources. So it might be quite helpful to have that Saturn go out of the whole sign eighth into the ninth. This might be a good time on the positive end for Saturn. Excuse me, if you are in the study of astrology or in higher education, this might be a time where you become serious about it and put in that discipline and hard work and effort, because even though Saturn is malefic and in fall, Saturn still rewards us for the hard work we do. So if you're a Leo rising studying astrology, say, this is going to be a part of a larger picture. as we go deeper into the year. To your point, Stevie, we've got the chart ruler, we've got the sun. The beginning of June, this may be a great time. We've got an active 11th house. We've got the Mercury and the tail end of Jupiter there. So maybe it's a great time for community groups, friendship groups, where if you are, for example, studying astrology, it's a great time to be in groups with other peers of astrologers at this time. But I think as we get deeper into June, we're going to have a lot of those planets start moving into the whole sign 12th house. So this is going to be before your season. So it might be a good time as we get later into June. Maybe take a retreat. Maybe if you can, maybe book a vacation and go and enjoy yourself to a certain degree. That might be a nice thing to do. We've got Venus, which will be zipping along, eventually going into your whole sign 10th house. So if you've been working hard, maybe in what you're doing, it's always a good time to maybe ask for a small raise, if that's something that you want to do. And let's see what else is going on. Stevie, yes, to your point with that Mars is eventually going to go into the whole sign second house. So just being mindful of spending. But on the flip side, on the positive end, with a bit of dignity for the Mars, we might be talking about putting an extra effort into getting another source of income, possibly, maybe another side hustle, whatever that might be. And especially with Saturn out of the way of the 8th, this might be a better time in terms of maybe the financial picture may start to move slightly. And
That's a great point. That's a great point.
yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially with again, you have the Mars sextiling Jupiter eventually, and so it's really the work that you do behind the scenes might be able to translate into that whole sign trine to the 10th house with Venus there, and parlaying that action with some benefit.
Oh, that's a wonderful point. Yeah, the connection of the second and the 10th will be an earthy signs here, and the connections between the planets there. Absolutely wonderful. Fantastic. Well, let us know, Leo Rising, in the comments how life is treating you. Okay, into our Virgo Rising friends. Stevie, your thoughts?
Yeah, Virgo rising friends. I'm excited about partnership stuff for you all. I think partnership stuff is going to be beautiful when we have our Jupiter ingress. Of course, she's kind of the belle of the ball this month. So, Jupiter is going to be moving into your 11th house. You have Jupiter ruling the 7th here. So I'm just liking this. I'm thinking you can find this isn't just romantic partnership either, but if you are looking to have like a co-op business style thing, the 11th house, 7th house is really harmonious in this way. So you have your trine by sign. And throughout the year, whenever we get Earth and water transits, that's just going to peak that up. And so when we have everything moving into Cancer, as well as Jupiter, we really have a lot of, the new moon is a degree away from Jupiter, so that's 7th house related as well, and of course 4th house as well. So home, relationships, all of that. All of that really fun stuff, but I think it's a beautiful year for this stuff. So
Wonderful point, Stevie. And I think for you, Virgo Rising, it's been quite an active time for some time for you. And I don't think the foot off the gas is going to let up any watts, because we've got, again, the preponderance of planets above the horizon. We've got an active 10th house and it's angular. So those planets are always loud. So there might be a lot of activity going on in terms of your career. What's nice is you have, at least for the first week of June, your chart ruler in rulership. And so there may be a lot of activity again in those themes of career, whatever you might be doing. And to Stevie's point, we're going to have that Jupiter go into his exaltation into the 11th. I've got a sense for you, Virgo Rising, especially if you're involved in, I mean, not all of you like public speaking, but if you do, this is a great time to be out in public, voicing, maybe giving a presentation, things along those lines. If you've got any conferences coming up, even though we're getting into the summer months where vacations are happening, I think this is a great time to do it. And especially with that Jupiter going into the whole sign 11th house, especially giving presentations when it involves, community events or things of that nature, that Jupiter is going to be in the 11th for the best part of a year. So this might not happen straight away, but that's something to keep an eye out. And to Stevie's point, that Jupiter is going to be ruling the 7th. So you can have a relationship component in there as well. We've got the North Node in the 7th house. So I don't really, for you, Virgo rising, if you're looking for a rest, I don't quite see that happening right now. And then to compound matters with the energy going on, we've got that Mars making its way into the first house. I would say if your early degrees are Virgo rising, just maybe watch out for that Mars. Watch out for any, sharp objects in the kitchen, things of that nature, as that Mars comes through. But again, this energetic principle, I think is going to be happening for quite a while. And if you are feeling a bit lethargic, we do have the South Node going through the first house. So if a lot of these energetic principles are getting quite a lot for you, maybe treat yourself. We're going to have Venus zipping through into her rulership through the 9th house. This could be a sense of taking a pleasure trip if you need to. Maybe a pleasure trip with friends as that Jupiter goes into Cancer. So if you do need to take a break, that might be a good outlet for doing that, I think, for you, Virgo rising.
Yeah, and if any of you Virgo risings have thought about the idea of organizing a union, you should start doing that this year and this month, actually. So start this month, because it's a very big mix of working one-on-one with people, as well as the collective Jupiter 11th house, Jupiter's house of joy, and it's for a collective stability in the future. So you guys are organized. You guys are the organized ones of the zodiac. So if anyone can do it, you guys can. And this is your month to start and year to finish.
I love that advice, Stevie. Yeah, if you're involved in anything like that, community events or unions, this is a great time for you. Even for the Virgo risings who may be, Virgo rising with the inward polarity here. Not all of you are going to be, extroverted. Some of you might be quite comfortable in, doing your thing at home, especially in your natal chart if you've got a preponderance of planets below the horizon in inward polarity signs. But if you are looking to branch out and build up that confidence, this is a wonderful time. Again, with that chart rule in the first week of June and that Jupiter going into the 11th, to push yourself out of your comfort zone if you are that way inclined, to connect with others and to get your voice out there, because this is going to be a great time for you to do that if you need to. Wonderful. Okay, into our Libra rising friends. Stevie, your thoughts?
Yeah, Libra rising friends, again, look back to last month's forecast so you can hear the brilliant Shu as well as Callum discuss Saturn and Aries, but I know that it's angular for you, of course. The Cardinals, we're gonna give the same advice to all the Cardinal angle people, which is just don't act right away. Just wait to act until all of these aspects happen. Again, we won't be getting the Jupiter Saturn the whole way through, so you might as well just give it a buffer if something gets triggered in there. And especially like Hal's been mentioning, if you have these earlier degrees in cardinal signs. So Venus is going to be finally out of, in a similar fashion, Mars leaving his long-awaited Leo, Venus is going to be leaving long-awaited Aries. And it's going into the 8th house, which is averse the ascendant, so you might not feel it as balmy as others, but I think your ascendant lord being at home is a huge deal, and there's no doubt it's going to be relieving some sense for you of having to perform for other people, and maybe cueing you to perform for yourself a little bit more and put the focus on yourself, because right now the focus is so much on other people. So looking forward to Venus Taurus for you, so just to refocus on yourself a little bit.
Wonderful advice, Stephen. And speaking as a Libra rising, all of your points hit home, and especially the other forecast that we did. We talked about, Venus in a detriment in an angular house, which is quite obvious. But I think you talked about us Libra risings being a little bit less charming than we otherwise might be. And it's so funny you said that, because that's certainly been true for me, because I've had to be a bit more forthright with other people. We're dealing with relationships in seventh house. But yes, for us Libra rising, I am looking forward to that Venus gaining dignity. Yes, as Stevie said, we're reverse the ascendant, maybe not quite as impactful, but our chart ruler does gain dignity. We're moving through the whole sign eighth house. This is, it's only going to be fairly brief, but it might be something along the lines of, maybe the partner gets a slight raise or a nice little bump, something along those terms, maybe in terms of shared resources. And yeah, I think that's going to be helpful as Venus goes through. But as Stevie said, maybe not quite as impactful. We've got quite a busy ninth house going on here, and of course, myself as an astrologer, I'm seeing this already with a lot of work with ninth house matters in terms of marking assignments and things along those nature. But other topics of the ninth house, especially early June, if you're looking to take a long distance travel, maybe go overseas, this is a nice time. We've still got, yes, Jupiter's in its detriment, and we're going to go to the critical degree, but still we're highlighting and expanding those areas. That Mercury is strong in rulership in the ninth house. So if you're taking a vacation or overseas, first week of June is probably the best time to do this. And further down the road, for the bigger picture, we're going to have the wonderfully exalted Jupiter go angular into our 10th house. Now, this is going to be more of a theme that happens over a year. So this might be a time where it might not happen straight away, but we're going to be highlighting the areas of career, public standing, all of those different themes that come from the 10th house. So if you've been working towards certain goals, maybe you might be highlighted some way as that Jupiter over the year spends its time in the 10th house. Maybe you'd be recognized at work, in your career, something along those lines. Maybe the only word of caution here, we've got the Mars moving into our whole sign 12th house. Sometimes Mars on the negative side moving through the 12th house. There could be people maybe working at cross purposes with you. Certainly watch out for maybe people wanting to stab you in the back, maybe because our Mars rules the seventh house. So maybe there's some relationships, maybe not so much co-workers, that's more sixth house, but certainly maybe watch out for hidden enemies, maybe something with that Mars going through the 12th. So maybe that may be a word of caution for us Libra risings. And of course, as Stevie mentioned, this Saturn Neptune is going to be a long story for a period of time. The Saturn and the Neptune is only really dipping its toes into our angular seventh house. So those themes of relationships, one-on-one partnerships are going to be a theme that runs for quite a time, and not the easiest planets to deal with, but that's something we're going to have to manage for a while. But for now, they're dipping their toes in, so it might not be quite obvious. We're going to have Saturn and Neptune go back into Pisces and then eventually come back through Aries. But that is a bigger story that's going to happen for a longer period of time in that sense. Wonderful. Thank you, Stevie. Into our Scorpio rising friends. Stevie, your thoughts?
Yeah, Scorpios are definitely gonna feel the final, well, not the final, but for now, the final the final Mars past the square to Uranus there. I think for you that this month that would be like a trademark situation. So definite tensions in 10th, 7th relationships, and how that relates to your ascendant lord here. But again, I think once that last clash is kind of over, you have Mars moving into Virgo, eventually making a sextile to Jupiter, and sort of from the 9th to the 11th there. So you're sort of going to be coming back home to yourself. The Aries folks did at least have Mars, Venus trying their ascendant, but you've really just had like not that much offered to you at this point with Mars's journey this last year. And so this is your point of like something's being offered to you. You have a little bit of balm there with Jupiter moving into the 9th. And I think another one of what Callum mentioned with these ninth house transits is if you are looking for higher education, philosophy, astrology, occult stuff, if you're scorpionic, That's a great month for you guys to jump into a group, jump into a study group, and just reach out. Yeah.
Wonderful point, Stevie. I feel like for many of you Scorpio risings, if work has been a bit cumbersome, I feel like as we get deeper into June, you might have an ease of pressure in that sense. We're going to get that Mars out of an angular house. And if it's been squaring up against your ascendant, maybe you felt a bit irritated, and maybe that has related to matters of career and work and have got an active
Mhm.
sixth house. So if work or your career's been a bit cumbersome, or you may be butting heads with bosses, things of that nature, I think that Mars is going to help as it moves on into the 11th whole sign.
Mhm.
And as Stevie's great points, we're going to have a shift of these planets move from the whole sign eighth, and going to make, depending on what your ascendant degree is, going to make nice connections with the
Mhm.
ascendant. We're going to have Mercury zipping along there, along with the Sun, deeper into the month. And if you're, especially as Jupiter, which is going to be really a picture for a full year, as Jupiter gains its exaltation in the ninth house, as
Mhm.
Stevie's saying, this is going to be highlighted. So whether you are looking to maybe, study astrology or broaden your horizons, this is going to be a great time to put your marker down in that sense. And even alternatively, other themes we've got in the ninth house, overseas travel. So in the next year, if you're thinking about expanding your horizons again, maybe overseas, this might be a great time to jot down those ideas and place those. We're going to have Venus gain dignity as she becomes angular into your seventh
Mhm.
house. So this might be just a nice month where you take your partner out for maybe a nice dinner. Move away from a lot of that overworked. If you're being overworked, maybe it's nice to get out with either a partner or a special one-on-one relationship and go and have some fun. This is my theme of the month. Take a break from the mundane, take a break and enjoy yourself if you can. Of course, the Saturn Neptune is gonna be a longer picture for you. But of
Mhm.
course, Saturn and Neptune are only dipping their toes into your whole sign sixth house. And yeah, so as that goes back through, that's going to be a bigger story for later on, I think, for you, Scorpio
Mhm.
Rising.
Mhm.
Wonderful. Thank you, Stevie. Let's go and talk about our Sagittarius Rising friends. Stevie, your thoughts.
Yeah, Sagittarius friends. Right now you have a lot of action going on in the seventh, and we're gonna see that moving away here. Again, you have Mercury moving through that whole quadrant of the chart, so only asking you to be more involved externally. It's going from personal to relationship to public in this way. Um, that might be a little bit like similar to the Gemini's risings of like it might seem a little quiet for a minute, and that might for some of you be a much needed quiet, and for others it might be like, is anyone here? So yeah, I think there's this like drastic kind of thing going on when we see Jupiter move into the eighth. And that could also be your partner getting really busy with work or coming up with an investment of some sort, or in your case, when we have the second, eighth axis are squaring the fifth house there. So it could be finances related to sports or children or some kind of recreation. So you might just see even finances for fun a vacation or something like that, or summer camps, getting that arranged. So you'll see all kinds of stuff like going from what are we doing in the family to bringing it out into the world.
Wonderful point, Stevie, especially with that Jupiter connection to the fourth house. I really like what you're saying there. And of course, for you, Sagittarius rising, Jupiter is your chart ruler, and it's been busy and quite loud and angular in the seventh house, bringing up all those themes of relationships, which is still the case for the early part of June. But as that Jupiter gains its exaltation, Stevie has mentioned this before, it might not be as quite obvious as it moves to averse your ascendant, but
Mhm.
you might still feel that shift with that chart ruler
Mhm.
gaining some dignity. And speaking to Stevie's point, many different themes. This is going to be something that happens over a year, so it might not happen straight away, but it could be, as Stevie say, maybe your partners. sense of income, those financial pieces. Might also be a good time to borrow from banks, maybe large sums if you need to work on the home, as we have that Jupiter connection to the fourth. So if you're looking to make home improvements over the next year, it might be a nice time as that Jupiter is in the eighth, ruling the fourth. That might be a nice time. We've got the North Node highlighting the fourth house as well. Of course, you have to look at your own chart and look at more details to see what's going on, but that could be a theme that manifests. The only word of caution I might say here is the Mars might be a little bit tricky as Mars becomes angular in your 10th house. You might, a possibility here might be, rubbing shoulders or getting irritated maybe with bosses or somebody in the work life who may be irritating to you. Because of course that Mars is, depending on what your ascendant degree is, that Mars is going to rub shoulders with your ascendant. So you might be feeling that sense of irritation in that sense as that Mars goes through. We've also got the South Node going through the 10th house for a time. So maybe, matters relating to career, maybe something that you have to look at, maybe some conflict there, particularly if you are a day chart and that Mars is your outer set malefic. I'd be more cautious about that Mars. I'd still be cautious of that Mars regardless, but if you're a night chart, that Mars might be a little bit easier with at least some dignity in Virgo there. What else is going on for you? We've got Venus toddling along, getting some dignity as it goes through Taurus. So some of that, talking about work, that might be a little bit easier in terms of any work that's on your plate at this time. And I was going to say something else, and it's completely gone out of my head, and I forgot.
I do have a thing about another Jupiter thing. So Jupiter is going to be going into the eighth, and we talked a little bit about the financial stuff behind that. I do think a lot of people who, with the market being really volatile, who've lost money in their 401ks, I actually think for them, they might bounce back with this. So for some of you, you might get the bounce back in this, not initially, because initially you're going to have the Jupiter square, Neptune and Saturn, but I think eventually you will get that bounce back. And then also with that square initially, with Saturn and Neptune moving into the fifth, it's not just about children, but hobbies, arts, crafts. Your art that you do might become more important to you, and you might need to become very serious about it. So with Jupiter there, it's just like you're gonna have to do running the expenses of how much you can invest into your own fifth house stuff in that regard.
I love that connection, Stevie, and I didn't think about that. But of course, Jupiter, the social planet, gaining dignity and exaltation. And of course, we've had these stupid trade wars, but now we've had the courts come in. We can look at law in terms of both Jupiter and Saturn to a certain degree for different roles. But I love how you're making that connection, because maybe we do, even on the collective, maybe see that bounce back if these courts are blocking these ridiculous tariffs that they're saying the executive branch can't do by themselves. Congress holds the purse strings, and relating to the markets, whether we do see a bounce in that sense. So I really like that connection, and that might play towards what's going on for you, Sagittarius Rising, as well. I love that point. Absolutely. Okay, into our Capricorn Rising friends. Stevie, your thoughts?
Capricorn friends, the big angular monster is there. So, um, everyone, good luck staying in our houses. Like I just moved in 6 months ago, so I better get to stay here for another 2 years. Um, yeah, I think I'm in fire country, so I guess the Neptune to me is sort of like that seems like good, right? It's gonna be too wet. There's gonna be something too. There's no way we're gonna get a flood here, but no, this is like the deep worry and concern that Saturn and Neptune bring. It's just an existential crisis just moved into our fourth house. So. Yeah, I guess for Capricorn risings, it's just I'm going with your main advice, which is to like take the good when it comes. You have Venus moving into the fifth, and it's gonna be trining your first house, so indulge. Obviously not too much with the Mercury and squaring Neptune, Sun squaring Neptune later. Jupiter in the seventh house is it's gonna be another major activation for you. So it could be a partner getting promoted. It could be some kind of a conscious uncoupling. Um, yeah, it could be finding a mentor. There's a lot there, but I think it's just take the good with it because we're gonna have the Saturn in the fourth for a while. So it's gonna be rough.
Wonderful point, Stevie. And you're obviously speaking as a Capricorn rising. And I just want to hug all my Capricorn rising friends because it's not been easy for a while. Yeah. Of course, the chart ruler, which is, Saturn in its fall, not overly helpful. It's angular, so it's loud, as Stevie is saying. So the matters of home life. And, we've got that Mars in the eighth, ruling the fourth. So if there has maybe a financial component that's been quite an issue, if you're moving house or things of that nature, it takes a lot of resources. And whether that Mars is being helpful or not, being a malefic, maybe not, depending, of course, what else is going on in your chart. And you've got Saturn ruling the second house as well. So there might be, again, still that financial component to all things going on. But I think the saving grace, and as Stevie's been talking about, I'm really looking forward for you, Capricorn Rising, of Jupiter gaining dignity, getting that wonderful exaltation into an angular seventh house, which is going to be loud for you. And we've got other planets as well this month moving into the seventh. So in terms of getting support and help, it's going to be the one of those one-on-one relationships. Whether that's really close one-on-one relationships, they can be platonic as well as romantic. I think you're going to find support if you've been struggling for a while from those one-on-one connections and support from other people. Because if you look at your chart, you've got a preponderance of planets in the Western Hemisphere. So if you're going to get support, or if you've been struggling recently, that support is going to likely come from those close relationships with others. And yeah, of course, that Saturn Neptune is going to be a big story. Saturn and Neptune is dipping its toes into your angular fourth. It's going to ease off as it goes back into Pisces, but then it's going to come back. And, Saturn's going to be what, a 2.5 year picture, and Neptune for many, many years. And so let us know in the comments how life is being treated you, Capricorn Rising, because again, I feel like a lot of you need a hug. Now, another positive thing I do like is we're going to have Venus only for a short period of time, but Venus is gaining dignity, moving through the fifth house. Now, a nice earthy sign, a strong Venus here, making a nice connection to your ascendant, whatever your ascendant degree is. We've got Venus ruling the 10th house. So there may be some favors from maybe, higher ups, things of that nature. And so that might be a nice outlet. Maybe some nice creative outlets. So Stevie's just mentioned moving into a new place. I think as this Venus moves into the fifth, not only if you've got children, maybe some nice creative projects with them, but if you do, maybe do some nice decorating around the home. I know we're getting out the fourth house, but creative projects are going to be really nice, and to make your home, to make that place your own through creative endeavors, I think
Yeah,
would be nice as
absolutely.
well.
And Capricorn, our cheat code for the next couple of years with Saturn in Aries, we're looking at Mars because we can't rely on Saturn. Saturn's gonna be in Aries. We have to take it as it comes. But Mars is still gonna be going through signs of dignity throughout the year. And so this Mars transit into Virgo is our first instance of that, where your exalted ascendant Lord, so Mars is exalted in Capricorn, and this is a little bit of advanced astrology, but your domicile Lord is and the most important, but second to that is your exalted Lord, and even if it's not in the house, it still plays a role. So our exalted Lord this last year was really debilitated in that retrograde, going into Cancer, going back into Leo. And so our exalted Lord is coming into its own, and it's sort of changing guards with Saturn to say, I'm going to be doing good throughout the year. You're going to be struggling and causing havoc. I'm gonna help Capricorns when I'm in Scorpio, when I'm in Virgo, and when I'm in Pisces, and so on and so forth. So pay attention to Mars for the next 2 years, and that's our little life hack.
I love that cheat code, Stevie. I think that's really great advice for Capricorn Rising. Absolutely wonderful. Okay, into our Aquarius Rising friends. Stevie, your thoughts?
Yeah, Aquarius risings. I feel like you all are still also getting to know life with Pluto. It's been a long, drawn out process of back and forthing it, and now we're on the main meat and potatoes of the transit here. And I'm sure you got a pretty big indicator of that with the Mars opposition, and we're gonna see it later with Venus square Pluto, and then we're gonna see it with Mercury opposite Pluto. So this, whatever has already started this level of having to embody power, embody or wrestle with power, or wrestle with feeling powerless or being powerless in some ways. I think those challenges are going to perk up a little bit, but you do have Saturn sextiling your ascendant, so there is sort of in this chaos of Saturn fallen, there is like uh, there is a place for you to stand up for the fallen. It doesn't just mean you're gonna fall over, but it means, especially with Pluto, that in the sextile, that you can champion, you can lift up the fallen around you. So I just want you to have that and know how strong you are and know that you can put your hand out and lift someone else up out of the trenches.
I absolutely love that, Stevie. Wonderful advice for Aquarius Rising. And to your point, we've got your chart ruler. And as Stevie mentioned, unlike our Capricorn Rising friends, which that Saturn is eventually going to make the angular square
Mm,
partial aspect to the ascendant here, as Stevie's saying, we're going to have a sextile eventually for a period of time. That Saturn is only
mm,
dipping its toes in for now. It's going to go back into your whole sign second house, and then it's going to be a story. But again, that connection to the ascendant is a bit more helpful in the sextile. And I think in terms of an outlet for you, Aquarius Rising, we're going to have some dignity with Venus as well. Venus is going to go into your angular fourth house. It's
mm,
only going to be a brief time, but this might be a nice time to be, having, nice events at home. Maybe things along those lines, a nice earthy sign, and to do things along, that nature, whether it's having, close family by or having a nice meal, things of that nature. We've had a lot of activity for you, Aquarius Rising, with a heavy emphasis in the fifth house. Of course, this is still going to be the case with the Sun and Mercury zipping through. So if you've had any, the tail end of Jupiter as well, any creative projects in the work, this is nice. Those planets are always going to make a nice aspect to the ascendant as well, depending on what degree your ascendant is. So if you've still got any creative projects on the go, bring those to completion. That's going to be nice. We're going to have the exalted Jupiter move into your whole sign sixth house.
mm,
And this is going to be maybe not obvious straight away. It's a verse the ascendant, and it's going to be a year picture. But
mm,
this can manifest in many different ways. Maybe even your workload maybe gets a bit heavy. So Jupiter's not always positive, but it might be a time where maybe you expand your workout routine, things of that nature, with the
mm.
topics of the sixth house coming in there. And I was going to say something else, and it's completely gone out of my mind. Any last
Mm.
thoughts there, Stevie?
Yeah, Jupiter 6. So maybe you get a peacock. Think about it. You could get a peacock. No, but hopefully many of you get a little beautiful little animal companion who is also your teacher in many ways and your baby in many ways.
I love that. It's going to be comfort from small pets,
Mhm,
absolutely. And
mhm,
for you, Aquarius Rising, you got preponderance of planets below the horizon in the northern hemisphere. So, this is going to be, again, for a long period of time. A lot of the energetic principles of the transiting planets is essentially, your private life. This is where the
mhm,
concentration of energies are. And, that's something you're going to focus on for quite some time as we go through.
mhm.
Okay, last but not least, our Pisces rising friends. Stevie, your thoughts?
Mhm. Yeah, so unfortunately, as Kyle has brought up several times, Saturn will be moving back into Pisces, unfortunately for Pisces. So again, this is my final time to get to say it, but they have one more chance to become the old man in the sea, and I won't be able to say that about them anymore. So um I think it's sort of a rough shot here because we have on one hand this incredible movement into their second house of resource coming, but this weight lifted off of the first house of self, but often our self is very much directly related to our resource. So it's gonna feel, I think, confusing, and I'm feeling like they're not gonna feel like it's really gone until it's like really gone or something. So there's probably gonna be a heavy apprehension, but once we have the belle of the ball move into their fifth, Jupiter and Cancer, that's gonna be just monumental. A beautiful year of recovery from Saturn, basically. And for a few signs, I totally didn't bring this up, but Jupiter is obviously related to fertility. Cancer is fertility related. So many of you with water ascendants, or even to some degree Earth ascendants, or where your specific Jupiter and Venuses are, it could be a time to take more precaution on starting a life, or if you wanted to intentionally start a life, a beautiful year of trying. At least you'll enjoy every attempt that you make this year. So.
I love that, Stevie. And the bell of the ball, of course, that Jupiter is your chart ruler. And I feel like for you, Pisces rising, life is going to let up
Mm,
somewhat if things have been stressful, maybe, particularly in your private life. I'm really excited for Pisces rising. Of course, it'll depend on your specific natal chart and other connections going on. But in general, in terms of the transiting planets, you've got your chart ruler going into wonderfully exalted
mm,
Jupiter, and in a very creative house with the fifth
mm,
house. This is going to be a story for the best part of a year. So this is not just the month of June, but depending what your ascendant degree is, it's going to eventually have a nice connection to your watery ascendant.
mm,
And so, over the next year, if you've got any nice creative projects on the go that you want to start up, maybe you spend a lot of time with your own children. Maybe, as Stevie was talking about fertility, if you're looking to expand or have more children, this might be a time as well. And maybe to offset some of the troubleness with Saturn is that when that Jupiter goes into the fifth, Jupiter also rules a 10th house. So maybe, you might have some connection to career and public
mm,
standing in that way. It's interesting. My son is Pisces rising, so obviously it's a very different conversation, but he's just made the top soccer team in our local area. So for him, for the next year, the element of sports with that Jupiter,
mm,
and building his creative craft in those sports are going to be really nice. So if you are sport inclined, there'll be a great time for the best part of a year. But in the more immediate future, of course, we've got a lot of the planets moving out of your active fourth house. Jupiter there has been there for a long time. Sun and Mercury are zipping their way along through the angular fourth house, so that you might have seen quite a lot of activity, and still maybe so in the first week or so of June around the
mm,
home, things going on. And as those planets move into the fifth, all those keywords of the fifth house are going to come into abundance. And so I just think for you, as Stevie is saying, it's a recovery time for you if that Saturn it's not over yet, that Saturn story, particularly if you are late degrees of Pisces rising, but you are nearly at the end of that
Nearly
story
at the
with that
end.
angular that angular Saturn in the
Mm,
first house. Now it's going to have its own challenges eventually in the second, along with Neptune, but it's gonna be the final bookmark of that
mm.
story for a long, long time for you, Pisces rising.
Yeah, and Venus, lest we forget Venus, maybe you all take a staycation or just do a short drive away, but enjoy the Venus. That's gonna be of course sextile your ascendant, and it's your exaltation ruler of your ascendant. So you're gonna have that double support, especially and all in the northern part of the chart. So it's again, like Cal said, very personal, and it's just about just just resting with all of the demands that everything you've actually just done for the last 2 years. Yeah.
You deserve it, Pisces
Mhm.
Rising. So enjoy, a lot of planets below the horizon. Enjoy it with close friends, or you do you, whatever
Mhm.
you do need
Mhm.
to do to relax.
Mhm.
Certainly take this break, Pisces Rising. Wonderful. Stevie, as always, thank you so much for going through the first couple of weeks of June and going through all of the rising signs. I just love your wisdom and your perspectives as we go through these monthly forecasts. For Stevie, what's going on with you? Anything that you'd like to share in terms of any work you're doing, or social media, all those kind of different things as we
Thanks,
talk.
Cal. I will be with Enid in June, delineation synthesis, and we're creating some games. So come play games with us. And I am with Inga on a revamped mythology course. So this will be part A, and then we'll have a second part B, but that'll start in July. So catch me in mythology with Inga and delineation synthesis. You can find them on the Kepler store. Go check them out. And I'm on the same socials as I usually am. Think yeah, yeah.
I love that. And I'm not just saying this because Stevie is here, but he is an absolutely brilliant astrologer. So whether you're looking to dive into the mythology in astrology, or if you're, not quite a beginner, but you're trying to learn how to synthesize charts together, you can't get a better teacher than Stevie in terms of analyzing, synthesizing information, if I can get my words out. And so certainly check out those courses. And of course, underneath the video, you'll see the links to those classes, as well as Stevie's socials, which remind me again, Stevie, you're on Instagram and
Just
what is
Instagram
it?
right now. Yeah, I'm just only there.
Wonderful. So you can check more out about Stevie down below. Wonderful.
Thanks, Cal.
Well,
It was really
it's
good to see
all
you.
absolutely wonderful. Thank you so much again, Stevie, for joining us for this monthly forecast. And we'll see you in, hold on, June, July, August. Is it September you'll be back for?
Yeah, I mean, we barely even covered that it was solstice, so don't get on us,
Oh
everyone.
yeah, that's true.
December solstice, by the way, but obviously we did talk about the new moon, but obviously Jupiter is just too preoccupying.
That's a good. I totally forgot about that.
I had it in my notes too, but I couldn't even talk about it because Jupiter is such a spectacle, and I'm just like, it's dry. I need water. I need water, Jupiter.
Not
So
just you, Stevie. That's totally on me as well. But anyway, so happy everyone. Bye-bye.
thanks.
Wonderful. Thank you all for watching, and we'll see you again next time. Goodbye.